It's a perfect storm. Two of the most ambitious open-world RPGs ever, releasing at very nearly at the same time. Now this is far from any other release day. It's a moment that's almost unique in the video game industry. Both titles are open-world RPGs, both come from highly respected studios, both are attempting to do things with the game genre that have never been done before, and both have been highly anticipated for years. The hype and interest surrounding both titles is off the charts, and with good reason. I'm of course talking about Baldur's Gate 3 and Starfield, and here's where things get interesting. Whilst both games are RPGs, they represent very different subgenres. Starfield falls into a category that many gamers are familiar with, but Baldur's Gate 3, well, it's a cRPG, a term that might be new to some. It's two very different approaches to the idea of an interactive, living, breathing world. Now what's so fascinating about this particular situation is that both Starfield and Baldur's Gate 3 really are pushing the envelopes of what is possible. If everything goes well with the launch of these titles, then it's very likely they're going to redefine people's expectations of the genres, and that means in the future people could look back at this moment as a unique piece of gaming history. Sure, it's not unusual for big, highly anticipated AAA titles to release within the same month, heck, even occasionally at the same day. Just think back to 2020 with Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing. What was interesting about that particular moment is both titles were highly anticipated, hugely successful, but completely different to each other. What's different today is that Baldur's Gate and Starfield are very much open-world RPGs and are both trying something new with the genre. And they're doing so in completely different ways, opposite sides of the same coin as it were. So let's take a closer look at the two distinct sides of these subgenres, the classic open-world RPG represented by Starfield and the cRPG represented by Baldur's Gate 3. So what is a cRPG and how does it differ from the more familiar RPG style of Starfield? These are questions I'm seeing a lot of people asking, and it's not surprising. After all, the level of interest is bringing these games and these questions to the attention of an entirely new audience. So whether you're new to cRPGs or, like me, are fascinated by this unusual clash of titans, I want to give you a high-level overview of what you can expect from Baldur's Gate 3 and how it contrasts to more familiar RPGs such as Starfield. The term cRPG then is computer roleplay game. That might seem odd, as RPGs generally are played on computers after all. But the term originally came about to differentiate between tabletop RPGs such as Dungeons & Dragons and their computer-based counterparts. Baldur's Gate 3 then comes from veteran studio Larian. The studio began life way back in 1996 and to date has released a number of games in the Divinity series. Most notably, Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2 were both hugely influential on cRPGs and are often cited as some of the best examples in the genre. Unlike more traditional RPGs, however, such as Witcher or Elder Scrolls series, cRPGs are characterized by a more strategic, top-down perspective and a focus on player choice and complex narrative. They often feature turn-based combat, although not always, as well as intricate systems that allow for a high degree of character customization. Now, if you're thinking that this all sounds a lot like Elder Scrolls or indeed Starfield, at least turn-based combat aside, you aren't entirely wrong. However, the key difference is that Starfield is going to offer players a more, shall we say, direct experience. In Starfield, you are your character. In Baldur's Gate 3, however, you embody your character in a distinctly different manner. You're not just controlling a character, you're stepping into a role within a complex living world. Every decision you make, from your dialogue choices to your combat strategy, can have far-reaching consequences on the game's story and the world. Now, in a cRPG like Baldur's Gate 3, the narrative unfolds based upon your actions and choices, making you feel like you're truly shaping that story. It's a more strategic and thoughtful approach to gameplay, where planning and decision-making are just as important as combat skills. On the other hand, in a game like Starfield, the experience is more direct and visceral. You're not just embodying a character, you're living as them in a vast, explorable universe. The combat is real-time, their exploration is immersive, and the narrative unfolds around you as you traverse through the cosmos. Now, both games are attempting to push what's possible with their respective genres. Baldur's Gate 3 is doing this in a number of ways. Firstly, the sheer amount of aspects of the game that can be interacted with is vast. Most objects within the game world can be interacted with, as can all NPCs. You are free, more or less, to break, steal and attack whatever and whoever you want. But of course, there will be consequences to this. Interestingly, this means players are going to be finding unique and imaginative ways to approach the game and overcome various situations. In short, Larian are providing players with the tools to approach their story in almost any way they can imagine. Now, as I've mentioned before, the sheer number of available options to how people can progress through the game means the title will have 17,000 variations on its ending. This is due to an almost chaotic ripple effect that hasn't really been done before in any other RPG. Most quests and NPCs don't just have a binary approach or a binary outcome. In short, Larian Studios have gone as far as they can in trying to recreate the feel of the pen and paper version of Dungeons & Dragons. That is, the idea of using your imagination when approaching a situation within the game. Naturally, this leads to a lot of possibilities. Whilst obviously there are technological limitations to just how far this can be pushed, Larian Studios seem to have done an amazing job nonetheless and really taken this about as far as it can possibly go. Baldur's Gate 3 then is very much all about a slow burn considered approach to how you play a game. It's about immersing yourself in a richly detailed world where every action has a consequence and every decision shapes the narrative. It's about exploring, experimenting and finding your own unique path through the game. It's about strategy, planning and thinking several steps ahead, and it's about playing a role, not just controlling a character. All that said, it is important to point something out, and that is this amount of flexibility on offer can both be rewarding as well as frustrating. Some people may feel that there's just a little bit too much freedom. Baldur's Gate 3 really guides you to your objective, and there's no real clear obvious path through the game, and whilst a lot of people will find that an enjoyable experience, others will understandably find it either daunting, confusing or frustrating. Now, don't get me wrong here, the game does go a long way to make sure you never really feel lost. However, it also doesn't hold your hand at every step. It's all too easy to find yourself in a story with consequences you never intended, as that ripple effect plays out in unexpected or unintended ways. That then is a massive part of Baldur's Gate 3's beauty, but for some, it may possibly be frustrating. I also want to briefly touch on this point on combat. I won't go too deeply into this as it is a massive subject. However, in a cRPG like Baldur's Gate 3, as well as in Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, combat is a strategic and tactical affair. It's turn-based, meaning you and your enemies take turns to move, attack and use abilities. This gives you time to think, plan and execute your strategies. You'll need to consider your positioning, the abilities of your characters and the strengths and weaknesses of your enemies. It's a system that rewards careful planning and strategic thinking. In contrast, combat in Starfield is, more real-time and action-orientated. You'll be making split-second decisions, dodging enemy attacks and aiming your shots in real time. It's a more visceral and immediate experience where your reflexes and quick thinking are just as important as your character's abilities and equipment. All of this also doesn't touch on character building. Both of the games are going to have deep character creation. However, it's worth pointing out that Baldur's Gate 3 is built on the Dungeons & Dragons rule set, which is literally hundreds of pages of rules, and this is very much reflected in the depth of the characters you can create. How far you choose to go with that generally is entirely up to you. The point here though is the sheer amount of depth and freedom. It certainly can be more than a little daunting. At any rate, this has been a high-level overview of what you can expect in Baldur's Gate 3 and how it compares to more traditional RPGs like Starfield. Whilst I certainly haven't gone into the specifics of Baldur's Gate 3, you can see that in another video I've released linked on the screen right here. I really wanted to just give a bit of an overview of what you can expect from this subgenre. I really hope it's helped or been of interest. I know there's a lot of people who are new to this particular type of game and may be wondering how things are intended to play out. Now, both Baldur's Gate 3 as well as Starfield are looking at this point to be exceptional, although time will tell for sure. And that said, currently people are having hands-on experience with Baldur's Gate 3. They've reported very good things. Whilst at the moment with Starfield, it does remain largely untested by the public. Hopefully both games have a great launch, but personally I'm fully expecting to see at least a few bugs and other issues, especially with Starfield. Either way though, this is certainly both a highly anticipated and unique moment in RPG history. It's not often that we get two massive open world games like this that are really big budget and are trying to really push what's possible with a video game, but both doing so in completely different directions. It's going to be interesting to say the least. Do let me know your thoughts and feelings about all of this in the comment section below. What do you feel is a good approach to, well, an open world game? Do you think that these are going in a new direction? Do you think they're trying something new? Or do you think we've all seen it before? Let me know what you think. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.